Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a fresh and insightful interview featuring one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. You can subscribe to our podcast on Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher, or on our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/The Director's Cut. And if you're enjoying The Director's Cut, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. We love hearing your feedback. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Michael Apted's new film, Unlocked. The film follows CIA agent Alice Racine, who is forced to live in London as a caseworker after failing to apprehend the terrorist behind an attack in Paris that claimed dozens of lives. When she is unexpectedly called back into action by a mentor, she discovers an even greater threat in the form of a lethal biological attack. In addition to Unlocked, Mr. Apted's filmography includes Gorillas in the Mist, The World Is Not Enough, Gorky Park, and The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. He also directed 7 of the 8 films in the internationally acclaimed, multi-award-winning documentary series Up. He earned a DGA Award nomination for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Feature Film for his 1980 feature Coal Miner's Daughter, and won the 2005 DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Dramatic Series for his episode The Stolen Eagle of the HBO series Rome. Mr. Apted served as DGA President from 2003 to 2009 and is currently the Secretary-Treasurer of the Guild. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Apted sat down with director Martin Campbell to discuss the making of Unlocked. During their conversation, Mr. Apted talks about his desire to create a film with quickness and energy, how he was able to make Prague look like London, and how his documentary background influences his approach to narrative films.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
Terrific film. Right up my street. I love thrillers. As the British would say, definitely my cup of tea. And I guess there are echoes of 3 Days of the Condor, some of my favorite films. Manchurian Candidate's another one that comes to mind. Political thriller. What else? The Bourne films, I expect. But this is something very contemporary. You know, it's right, very much of today, particularly when we're talking about terrorism in Paris and certainly biological terror. Great subject, and for me, a terrific film. And certainly something I think that certainly different from probably what you've been doing recently.
Yeah, no, this is my... Apart from the fact that we both did Bonds, and yours were excellent. Do we call those thrillers? Not really.
Well, not really. No. Bond is Bond. I mean, some of it's thrilling, but it's not in this sort of very gritty, realistic vein.
I think the tricky one with this was, what it's about is horrifying, and you didn't really want to rub everybody's nose in it. So, I kept back from going on about it. I mean, it was important that what we were dealing with was something that could happen at any moment, at any time, but not to harp on it too much, if you know what I mean, not to particularly just rub people's noses in it. Otherwise, it could be very, very off-putting.
Well, it is interesting that, of course, biological warfare is the one thing in reality we have yet to see in terms of terrorism. I mean, it's there, obviously, and one day it's going to happen. And God help us when it does. So I think, it was very pertinent to...
I mean, you mentioned, I was very impressed with the very first Bourne identity.
Yes, a terrific film.
And
yeah.
What I got from that is what I did here. I like the fact that their violence is very quick all the time.
Uh-huh.
I find that in a lot of these thriller films that the stunt stuff goes on and on and on. I mean, it does in Bond because that's what it's about, but in something that's supposed to be naturalistic and real, I like action to be short and sharp.
Well, you certainly did it with this, and as you quite rightly pointed out, so often in these movies it goes on forever, the action, and there's not a drop of blood.
No. Everybody would be dead by the time they finish some of them. But I just like the kind of immediacy and the violence and the speed of particularly the firstborn. For the firstborn one.
Very much so. The script by Peter O'Brien, right? Now, I understand that once topped the blacklist. Was it 2008?
Something like that, yeah. It had been around. This was the first script he'd written, and it was on the blacklist, which, for everybody's interest, that's a list of the best scripts that have never been done.
Right.
And, this was on from 2008, apparently, and hanging around.
So how did you become attached, and why did you become attached, I suppose, is the...
It had a director on it. I mean, they hadn't started or anything. Someone I became quite friendly with, and I just did a series called what's it called in Florida, and he did a lot of them. Blood.
Was that Masters of Sex? Or
no,
was
that wasn't in Florida. But anyway, what was it called? What's Bloodline? Bloodline, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, basically, he was on it for some time, and he was never convinced there was enough money to make it, and he annoyed them all, and so he left. So that was that, or they pushed him out. And so I took it on, and I read the script, and I liked it because I think what it had, which is what I love in a thriller, is, things are unexpected. You don't really see what's coming at you miles ahead. I mean, that's the problem with doing thrillers. Sometimes the audience is miles ahead of you. And I found reading this that it was a bit of a page-turner, that it
certainly was looking at it.
And you didn't really know what was going to happen and whatever, and then startling things did happen, and at the end of the day it all made some sort of sense. But that's what appealed to me with it, that it had a crispness to it and real kind of motion to it, that you didn't quite know which way you were going.
No, I think from the moment you realize she's been betrayed, which is such a slap in the face to everybody and such a surprise, that's where it really turns and takes off in another direction. The thing is, it's a very complex story. It's very complex. Nobody is who they seem to be, and God help if you go off to the restroom and come back, you've probably missed it. But the thing is that obviously, one of the things that you managed to pull off in a very complex story with many, many twists and turns is that it does make sense and you do understand it, but you really have to concentrate to understand it. Is that something you thought about very much when you came to direct it and work on the script?
Yeah, I wanted it to move along. I didn't want an audience to be hung out to dry too much. I just wanted to keep the energy going. And I didn't want to keep an audience in the dark longer than they had to be in the dark, as it were. So I just wanted it to have a strong energy to it, and not to belabor it if you could. And if you missed a point, so you missed a point. But I didn't want it to drag around. And it was quite a difficult film to cut.
I bet it was.
Because sometimes we did versions which were so quick, you were sort of, your eyeballs were rolling. Other ones, sometimes it was so slow, you thought, get on with it.
Yeah.
So, and we ran it for audiences quite a bit. The big problem we had with the film was we did a very bad ending. Not that's in the film. We did an ending which didn't work, and we did it for a good reason. What we wanted to have original was an ending which kind of brought her humanity back, because she, as a woman, she'd been doing all sorts of things, and we wanted to get the kind of gentleness of the character back again. So we shot this end, and then we previewed the film, and people hated it. They didn't want that at all. They wanted her to go and finish them all off.
Just kick some butt.
Right.
Kick some butt, basically.
And it took a year for them to agree. Well, it was only 2 days filming, but it took a year to get the money to do it. And I was absolutely adamant that the end that we had originally shot was ridiculous and would never work, and would let the audience go out feeling cheated.
Sure.
But this ending, was, as I said, it was kicking ass, and that's what they wanted. And she's very convincing. She can do a lot of the stuff herself.
Sure.
And so we had to see it through. But as I said, it really stopped the motion of the film for a year.
Good
while
Lord.
We were fighting for them to just give us a bit of money to do it.
To actually replace it. Let me talk about the cast. I mean, it's incredibly high stakes cast. I mean, Numi is obviously terrific European. You've got Michael Douglas, right?
Yeah.
You've got Orlando Bloom. You've got Toni Collette. And Malkovich, who I can watch until the cows come home. This guy always I find incredibly interesting to watch. But the other person I thought was a find was Tosin Cole. I thought he was really good, very charming, very convincing.
Very good,
I don't know where you got him from, but just you got excellent performances out of everybody. It's a tight budget. I mean, how the hell did you get that cast?
I don't know. Well, the cast, I mean, for example, one of the producers, Bonaventura, knew Michael Douglas, and he agreed to do it. Naomi was already on it. I pursued Orlando because I'd seen a cop film he'd done in South Africa, which I thought he was really good and real in it, so I pursued
a very different part for him, I must say.
I thought
he was surprising in it.
Yeah, and he surprised me when I saw that film. There was something about him, and he was very interested in doing it, and he gave me a hard time because he wanted to make sure everything was right and all this. And having said to him, make the part your own, put your own personality into it. If a scene doesn't work for you or lines don't work for you, let's talk about it.
Sure.
So he can project his persona into it. So it was hard work with him, but he really got involved in it. He was very impressive, and he worked really hard. I mean, what was the nightmare for us was when you get actors of this caliber, they're never there at the same time.
I know.
I mean, for Numi, it was horrific. I mean, she'd do a week with so-and-so, and then he'd go, and then Toni Collette would come in, and she'd do a week, and then Orlando would come in and do 2 weeks and all this, and she never really ever got a shot at doing anything like the sequence of the film. And I don't think the five of them were ever together, ever.
Yeah.
So, which is part of
the business. Well, it has to be to your credit that, of course, you don't notice that. I mean, it seemed to work. It seemed to work extremely well, even though you had those problems. You hadn't worked with any of these actors before, have you?
No, I hadn't.
So it was all completely fresh from that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel, but when I meet Michael Douglas, I feel extremely nervous about it. Because these people are have been around the block.
I know,
and you think, how do you handle it and all that sort of stuff? Will they want to hear anything from me, or how do I approach them and all this?
I know it's always.
You have to tread carefully, but on the other hand, you have some idea of what you want, and you have to, deliver it.
Well, that brings me to the next point, which is, I mean, you have a great reputation for directing actors. I mean, did you get any rehearsal time? I mean, probably not with what you just talked about, but before the shoot or during the shoot or weekends, or how did you...
like that, we really snatched times that we have. I mean, I had her for a week, on her own.
Before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we built some rehearsals into the stuff she did with Orlando. But, really, I said hello to Michael and off we went on the thing. And so the same with John. But, I mean, what was so comforting for me was they all got involved in it. I mean, some had small parts, some had big parts. But they never kind of patronized us. However big a star they were, they did the work, and they could see that I liked to rehearse if I had time to do it, and liked to talk about it with the actors. And so they picked up that kind of feeling about it, that I was interested in the performances, that I wanted them to do maybe things that they weren't quite used to doing. I didn't just want to put everybody's vision of Michael Douglas on the screen again.
Sure.
So once they had sensed that I had their interests at heart, and I really wanted the best for all of us, they played along with it.
Oh, that's great. And of course, the heart, the emotional core of the movie is her. It's Alice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly she's living with this dark cloud of what happened in Paris.
Sure.
I mean, presumably from what you read in the original script, I imagine the updating of using Paris as the target for really
we were
what
hung out
was
to
her
dry.
Nightmare, basically, was all very contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, I'd shot that scene before it happened in Paris, before the one where they attacked the nightclub and 100 people were murdered. So we had to then make some changes in the dialogue to say, this happened, what happened in the movie happened before the 2015 stuff. So we were so far ahead of the game that we got caught out.
Now, you it was based in Prague, was it?
Well, we shot it in Prague, yes.
Yeah.
It was all based in London, and the very end was Prague, but it was too expensive to shoot in London. And Prague is very, very good. They've got very good crew.
Right.
And they've got quite a lot of English-speaking people there to play small parts and whatever. And, they'll give you a good deal. And I had this wonderful production designer who was very young. And he said,
was he local? Was he a Czech production
yeah,
designer?
I knew I had to have a Czech designer.
Okay.
And his word of wisdom to me is, when you choose the English locations that I have to match to, don't go to places that everybody knows about.
Sure.
I can't do that. But if you choose, and I'll help you choose the London locations, then I can match them.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that looking at the film, the proportion of what's shot in London and what you... It doesn't give any... it feels very much a London-based film,
we shot 36 days in Prague and 6 days in London.
But that's, considering the amount of locations you had to do, which seemed a hell of a lot. I don't know how many there were, but
there was a lot.
We had ducking and diving all over the place. Yeah. With that kind of tight schedule, obviously with a tight budget, as all these things independent movies
they're all
are.
under budgeted, yeah.
You must have been, how many locations, you must have been running all over the place.
We were on location pretty much every day. We did a little bit of studio work in Barrandov in Prague, but otherwise we were on locations or shooting interiors in the Czech Republic that was supposed to be in London.
Yeah.
And that was really the skill of the production designer, making sure that it looked authentic for London.
Well, it certainly worked, I have to say. Now, I just want to talk about your producers for a second. You had Lorenzo, who is a kind of, he's a stalwart. He's been around for years. He's old school. He's made these huge studio pictures. Everything from The Matrix to Transformers, to you name it. He's been around for years and a very talented producer. And then, of course, you had Georgina Townsley, who I think her reputation is as a producer of some award-winning documentaries, which I know would be appeal to your heart. But how did the combination work? Who was on set? Who was? How did it?
Well, it really was. The working producers were Georgina and Eric Howson. Lorenzo came and visited a couple of times, but he kept. But the real difficulty was, the whole business of it was German money.
Oh, okay.
And the money was in and out, and all this kind of stuff. And when I got on the plane to fly to Prague, I thought I had 20 million. When I sat down at the first meeting that afternoon, I suddenly had 15.5. So it was a bit like that. 4.5 million disappeared in the air. So there was always this discussion as who said what, how much were we going to have, and all this, because the cast cost a lot of money.
I'm sure they did.
And a lot of the big chunk of the budget went on to them, which everybody thought was a good idea. But, it was very difficult. I probably spent 7 million shooting the thing. That was the money available to me to shoot the film.
And did Silver Reel finance this totally, or was it a combination?
No, it was a combination. There was 3 or 4 people on the front there.
And that's always difficult because in all of this sort of independent world, what happens is that the 3 or 4 parties, and then one party may drop out, and then also you get sort of several opinions about the film. It's a minefield now, isn't it?
Yes, it's just a bit of a lack of wisdom about it. I'm sure we both have had rough times with American studios and all this, but the margins are so slim in Europe, whether you can make a profit or not. That people are tap dancing all over the place.
But presumably with that cast, there were a lot of pre-sales. It seems to me a very good cast in terms of pre-selling the movie, which is, after all, what these independent movies rely on in terms to finance.
But, that hasn't worked too well for us here because, Lionsgate are doing us, but they're doing us in a very odd way. It's opening this weekend in 17 cinemas, and that's it.
17?
17, and the rest of it is online. iTunes, and it's all over iTunes this weekend. So we never got a full studio release for it.
Oh, I see.
So because I suppose they felt the money ran out and whatever.
Oh, God Almighty. And just getting back to the producer question, because it's always the ideal producer. You know, it's always interesting to me that when you started, and probably when I was way back, you know, a producer really meant something. In other words, you would have somebody who would work on the creative process, would back you up during filming, would be there when there were financial problems. It doesn't seem to exist anymore. They don't seem the role of producer. And now you look at any movie, and everyone and their dog has become a producer. You know what I mean?
Dogs are good producers, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I said dogs are rather good at that. Yeah.
yes.
Because they don't answer back, right?
Probably have better opinions than those. Yeah. Anyway, but the whole situation's changed, and talk about a lack of good producers. It's
and when you get someone who's really, you know, like Lorenzo, I mean, he's got so many movies going on. You know, and his people like Eric, I mean, they were here, they were there, they were everywhere.
Sure.
So it does leave a lot more responsibility to people like us. But that's pretty difficult if we're dealing with financiers who are speaking German all the time and whatever, because they're German and they're entitled to. But, you know, it does there's enough load on us to get it done anyway, because we're always under scheduled and all this. But when you have to get involved in the kind of financing of it and all that, I mean, that's a real mystery.
And as you say, inevitably, of course, the finance means there's less finance than the promise. There's always every day is a problem. Now, George Richmond, he was the DP on this.
Yes,
he did a hell of a job too.
He did.
I have to say that the kind of gritty texture, the kind of gunmetal, gave a very realistic, authentic feel to the movies. Obviously, you discussed this with him, and I also imagine that your documentary background came into this play, because in all your work, I never feel there's a shot where I say, oh, that's a wonderful shot. It services the drama, it services the action, and you never have to comment, and on the shot. The point is the drama's doing the work.
It's a nice thing to say, because I do that. And people say, oh, you don't shoot stuff that well, but I mean, I shoot what I think I need to shoot, and because of my roots in documentary, I'm obsessed with the reality of stuff. You know, is this what should it look like? What would it look like? You know, I like it to be authentic. But just my little story about George is the second movie I did in 1973 was a photograph by Tony Richmond. And there was this little brat of a son of him running around the place. And I was doing this big rock and roll film in London with him. And then, lo and behold, here's George, the little brat, now doing this film.
So he filmed this?
Yes, that's right. God. So shows how long I've been going, doesn't it?
Well, he certainly did a great job.
Yes, and he's collaborative and whatever, you know. But he's also his own man. If he thinks it's a load of rubbish, he'll tell you.
Yeah,
you know, he's not easily intimidated.
Well, I've worked with him on commercials, and he certainly does. He calls a spade, which
absolutely.
Which is, but the look and style seems a perfect marriage for the film, I have to say. And with your documentary background, it all feels absolutely.
That's why shooting on location, to me, if I can do it, you know, adds such a dimension. You know,
you're absolutely. Yeah.
If there's a location, rather than build it or spend a lot of time on stages, I'd rather shoot, you know, on a real location, because it puts.
Yeah, and it's not just that; it's also the sound quality, somehow the weight when a door closes, everything. It's so much more real than being on it.
Do you like to shoot on location?
Always, as much as, I mean, obviously on Bond, both of us know we had a lot of studio stuff to do there, because it's heightened reality, basically, but I love to shoot on location. I would do it sort of all the time. How do you, the way you plan your camera setups and so forth, is this something, do you plan it beforehand? Do you block your actors and then subsequently, as a result of that, then decide what to shoot? Is it a camera list, a shot list the night before?
It depends what it is. I find it varies with whatever the scene is. You know, if a scene is a very kind of emotional scene between actors, and I've tried to rehearse it and all that sort of stuff, and try in a way to stage it too, you know, to take a couple of days, not shooting days, but you know, off days to work with them. And then the way I shoot it really comes from the demands of the emotion of the scene. But sometimes when you have a really terrific location and, you want some scale or you want some shape or you want some beauty or some profound ugliness in it, it's really what the location itself tells me how to shoot it.
Sure.
So it's either what the demands of the actors are to deliver any emotion in it, which determines how I shoot it, and or it's why I chose that location is therefore why I chose it is how we're going to shoot it.
Sure.
So I mean, you people well, not really contemporaries because he's much older than us, but someone like Ridley has got this astonishing eye where he can be anywhere and
exactly.
do wonderful things, but I don't have that. But so mine is all based in some other, in my world, reality, whether
sure.
it's reality of the performances or the reality where I've chosen to do it.
Yeah. Can I ask you, what were the studio sets? I think I only recognised one, which was possibly and I've probably got it wrong, which is the security thing at Heathrow Airport.
Yes.
That looked like a set, because I had exactly the same problem on the film I've done. In fact, I couldn't find anywhere in London that would allow us to do it.
I was in Prague, and they're much more loosey-goosey there, my friend.
Yes, they are.
And they'd closed down a whole wing of the airport for me for one morning, and there I was, shooting at Prague Airport. So you managed to
get the whole lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, very well. You're lucky. They kicked us out of every place in London. We finally had to do it in China, of all places. It's ridiculous. Anyway, there we are. So now what about second unit? Did you have a second unit director, or do you like to shoot it yourself?
I had a second unit. Our friend, Gary.
Gary did that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Greg,
Graham.
Greg, yeah.
He did it because there was quite a lot of stuff in it, and again, it's especially when you're under pressure and you've got a lot to do in a little time, you sort of want to hand some of those big action shots over to someone else.
Sure.
And they're very good at it, and they're better than I am at it. So, use it. It's as long as we're on the same page.
Yeah, some directors don't, there's...
I can see that, but I know what I can do and what I can't do, or, what will take an inordinate amount of time with me trying to figure it out when it's sort of instinctive. But my main note to that all really is something I said earlier on, that I wanted the action to be quick.
Right.
I wanted the action to be very speedy and never linger, so you wouldn't think that these people were going to kill themselves. So that determined a lot the way it was shot.
Yeah.
I would never let them go on a lot with it.
No, it did not.
No.
They were very vicious.
I'd rather have it
short.
short and vicious than long-winded and whatever. So there was less sort of second unit because the action scenes were pretty compact.
And now was she? Did she do some of her own stuff?
Yeah, she
looked pretty fit to me. I mean,
she's ridiculously fit. I mean, she's such a serious actress. I mean, she's in the gym every night. She's working on stuff, and she did get injured, so we had to stop for a bit with her. I mean, not shooting, but stop her doing all her stunts. But no, she's very game to do them, and like with some other actors as well, you want to stop it because you really don't want them to be damaged.
No,
but no, she's very good at that and very believable in that.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I really liked her in the role, is you think she can look after herself.
Yeah, there's always that problem. So often you see is that with women beating the hell out of special forces guys, everything else, you just don't believe a word of it. I mean, but she was certainly convincing in this, in terms of, and she had obviously, given her background, everything else, had been trained in this and knows what she's doing. But I mean, I particularly liked when she's interrogating the boy to begin with, and this is when she's double-crossed and realizes, indeed, this is, she's working for that big twist early on, when she picks up the guns and takes them down the stairs and so forth.
Not working for the CIA,
sequence.
Yeah. No, she's very good at that, and she's very interested in it. Sometimes, as you say, it does extend your belief sometimes when you see, someone acting a part and then someone doing the stunts.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to gel.
Well, you seem to have a hell of a lot to do on a very tight budget and a very short schedule. Presumably your television work helps enormously with this in terms of...
That's when, that's what I came out of, and it was That's why it was so bizarre to do a Bond film, because it was like having a proper job. You
Yes.
you went in week after week after week to Pinewood.
God, yes, they were long schedules, weren't
You
they? I
started
remember
at
them.
7, you went home at 6, you came back at 7, and all that sort of stuff.
I know. Well, you get a little spoiled on Bond, don't you?
Yes,
I mean, in the sense that suddenly money is not the problem.
No, but there's such long shoots that you have to get a rhythm to yourself, which is strange.
I know. You keep spinning your wheels wanting to move.
I used to hear that you used to be on the set at like at 3 a.m, pounding the set.
I was pounding the set, yeah. Well, you sort of get conscientious about the money and about, your schedule and everything else. And but I have to say that, as both of us know, that was a pretty enjoyable time, those movies.
Yeah. It was great.
It doesn't really happen nowadays, however. Any crew members, do you work with the same people? Do you like to change them? Do you vary them? I mean, for example, your cameraman, your editor, your...
I've worked with
a production designer.
I've worked with a lot of people I'd love to work with again, but sometimes you have to fit in with everybody's,
schedules.
That's the difficult thing.
Yeah,
I've worked with tons of cameramen, and it's so difficult to fit it all, to fit it in. And the same with, I'd use this production designer, this Czech guy, anywhere I went. Again, he has to work. He can't wait for me. And I'm not doing all that much work at the moment, so. But I built up quite a body of crew.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have too. People you really trust and whatever.
Yeah, well, people you can work with, you tend to want to go back to, because there's a shorthand there, obviously.
Because I like to work quickly, and I know you do too.
Yeah, I do work quickly.
And if people can't keep up, as it were, I mean, I have the inclination to be sloppy sometimes, so I need people to tell me to slow down, as it were. But on the other hand, I just love the energy when everybody's working and, I'm pushing them and all this kind of stuff. It just makes the job somehow more interesting and more exciting.
Yeah. And it sounds an odd question, but do you work with your line producer? I work with mine an awful lot.
No, I've never had that luxury, really. I mean, I've got someone who's worked with me for 15 years, but he's more of a super glorified assistant, really, but he gets producer credit and all this. And we live together pretty much. We have offices together, but when it comes to each of the movies, then it tends to be different people.
Sure. Well, for me, working with the line producer, often because the producer's absent or not there,
right,
in terms of meeting the schedule, which means the budget and so forth. Every day's work, you want an extra 50 extras here, but in order to do that, you're going to trade off somewhere else down the line. But in other words, I
don't have that relationship, really. It's a pity. Do you use someone most of the time?
Well, I try to get someone that I at least agree should do the job and sort of meet them and talk to them.
Because, both of us have done films that have been incredibly expensive and also they've been incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep adjusting backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
We can both do it and we both have to do it, but it's a bit of brain surgery sometimes when you realize how little money you've got, or what am I going to do with all this money,
Exactly, yeah. Yep. What was I going to say? And how do you work with your editor? Does your editor give you an assembly and then you give it to he or she?
Yes.
And then you go in at a later, once you look at the assembly, is it a series of notes and then you subsequently go back in again, or do you then go reel by reel? How do you?
Yeah, I try and look at stuff as we shoot it, and I get them to try and cut it, put it just together to see whether what I'm trying to get is working and whether he understands or she understands what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and keep an eye on it. Certainly if we're doing a 5-day week, then on the 6th day, I'll edit all day with it.
Right.
Because I don't want it to get out of hand. On the other hand, I don't want it to get so detailed that until you begin to put the movie together, do you really know, the weight of each scene, as it were. But I do like to keep tabs on it a bit. I don't just walk away from the editor, say, have a nice day, and rejoin him 6 months,
No,
3 weeks later. So I like to keep tabs on it,
I can never bear watching an assembly. I cannot watch it. I simply go in and start on reel one. I just can't do it. It just terrifies me as to how the...
You do have to be very disciplined, otherwise you have a nervous breakdown when you see the first edit of it.
Yeah.
I know, and it's probably what you asked for, and it looks terrible. So.
but I mean, the nice thing is, it can only get better.
Yeah,
I mean,
hopefully. Hopefully. Right.
And do you shoot a lot of do you shoot a lot of footage, or do you just?
Yes and no. I mean, I like to, if it's an emotional scene, I'm prepared to keep going with them to get stuff out of it. I won't shoot enormous amounts on big action scenes. I'll get lots of coverage if I want it. If I know I've got to sustain the energy of the scene and keep the scene moving, then I'll need a lot of coverage.
Right.
But I don't necessarily do a lot of takes. I think when I have it, I have it.
Right.
And if I don't have it, I just go on until I do get it, unless it's going to be impossible. But no, I tend not to shoot lots of takes automatically. Only in crisis do I.
Yeah. And do you go over the material again? On set, when you're shooting, and obviously at the pace you're shooting, and then you nominate certain takes because this is what. Right. But then when you go back on the cutting, do you then go back over all the material?
Most of it,
yeah. So do I.
Because you do have quite a bit of downtime. When you're editing while they're doing all the changes. So I do like to go back and look at stuff and. Remember, I thought there was something better here that,
Sure. It's always a line, maybe, or a delivery that's slightly better.
It's always worthwhile just going back into stuff.
Absolutely.
And nowadays, you can do it in bed practically. I mean, it's so mobile, the whole thing. But I don't think, there comes a point where you just get fed up with it. I never want to see any of this ever again. When you've just had it. But I think until you get to that place, it's good to just keep working on it.
Now, what's your? Do you get terrified at previews? Do you sit there sweating or screaming?
Terrified of this, let alone previews.
Oh,
and this is a home game for me.
Well, I'm sure they all enjoyed it, but do you get? There's nothing worse. There is nothing worse than sitting in a preview and being judged, and they pull out those cards and. Yeah. I remember one where a preview I had of the film, and it was really pretty good reaction. Then I read this card; it just said, "It sucks." Right. So some of the stuff
when the second half of the thing is when they sit 2 rows of people.
Oh yes! Oh my God!
They almost will them to criticize the film. Are you sure there was nothing wrong with that? No, I think leave it alone. For Christ's sake, it's all been written down.
Yeah.
And the studios will look at it all the next day. The studios will look at it all the next day, and it's like they wind these people up to be critical.
Well, also, you always get the experts, of course, standing up and saying, "I thought the music was shit," or whatever, and it turns out it was all temporary music.
And we have to be grown up about it because it's very, very important that people have to see it who are not our friends and neighbours and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But it is painful. It never gets easy, does it?
No, it doesn't. Of course, they've been doing previews since 1930 or whatever. It's always
better men than Duffs have had to sit through previews.
Yes, absolutely. And before taking on any project now, do you ever ask yourself the question, who is going to see my movie? I do as well. Yeah. I never used to, but I have to say now you have to sort of ask that question.
It's a worry because I don't have much connection with what we'll call the Marvel world, that sort of stuff. I'm never going to be asked to do one, and I wouldn't know how to handle it. So, and that's a huge piece of the industry in a sense. Those very expensive, big tentpole productions.
Well, it doesn't seem to be anything in between. There's either the kind of what you're.
But you've done more than I have.
Unlocked, and I did Green Lantern. That was a flop, right? And you take some heat for that. You get your ass kicked basically when that happens, and you go to director's jail and so on and so forth. Right. But you take that risk. But the films in between, whereas I think 15 years ago, when you're at the studio. There was, say, Vertical Limit, which I did for 75 million, whatever it may be. There were those intermediate, as you know. Enough, I think, was a movie you did. Was that a studio movie again? Yeah. That was, at least there was. There were those in-between movies. Now there seems to be this huge yawning gap between the Marvel movies.
Now it's all the smaller budget pictures that we used to yearn for. Now are on television. I came to America in the 80s because I loved American movies and wanted to do them. And then, things happened which changed the whole industry. Star Wars opened, Jaws opened,
Sure.
and suddenly movies became about the weekend, and studios started being run by businessmen and accountants and
Sure.
stuff like that. And over that next 2 decades, the whole business sort of changed around, and the films that I came to do were no longer being done.
Sure.
But now at least there's a kind of golden age in television, when there is intelligent, adult, well-acted, well-written stuff being done, and people seem to be watching it. So, while we can't compete in the teenage market,
Sure.
There is that outlet for people like us who prefer to work in a sort of more modest way.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about, what's your take on the declining box office at the moment? It's down 12 or 15%. Is it because the films are bad, or is it because of all the viewing platforms that we have? Is it?
Well, that's, we're living through that now. I mean, as I said,
sequel fatigue, maybe?
Yeah. Well, but this film has gone pretty much, on the whole, straight onto, into the, into whatever.
But you said it's only opening in 17 screens?
Yeah,
here,
no, it's all over iTunes and things like that already. And it hasn't really opened. So that's another step, and there's a lot of films like that. And it's also a way of doing it, that Netflix will buy a film, give it a week, and then put it out there. And if it starts getting good reviews and things like that, they'll bring it back for the Academy.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of, it's bad enough being tested at every corner, but now, they test you on television or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I suppose films are so expensive and everything, but it is worrying this year.
I mean, a 12 to 15% drop this year,
huge,
which is alarming.
It's not over yet, but it's, But our boy Nolan did well, didn't he?
Who?
Nolan with Dunkirk, he did well.
Oh, God, yes, he did. Yeah.
He seems to have a magic touch, doesn't he?
Well, he does, and... Well, he's a terrific filmmaker, and I think he did a fantastic job on the movie. But you could never have put that film on Netflix. It simply desperately needs the big screen to actually.
And I remember him saying, "I only wanted to make this film when I had the power to make it as I wanted it."
Yeah.
When he did the other films, he wasn't his own boss all the time, but now he's been so successful that now he can, if they're for a certain budget, he can call the tune.
Absolutely. And the fact it was a big success, basically, is albeit a historical, a Second World War story, and Dunkirk, which most Americans probably had never heard of. So to actually pull that off, I think was a big achievement, wasn't it? Yeah. Which is great. So what's next? Anything?
I don't know. The only job I know I've got next is next year I'll do 63 Up. That's
it's a marvelous series. We all know that from.
So at least
the 7 Up series is brilliant. Of course,
it's been a wonderful piece of good fortune for me, and it's given me a job every 7 years. So which is more than probably you can say. So I've got a job coming on in 2019. I have to get it ready for.
Well, Michael, thank you very much indeed. I loved the film.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. Don't forget, you can check out past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have a lot more for you in the coming months as awards season approaches, so stay tuned. Also, be sure to subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date on the great discussions we have coming up. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.